Hi, you are watching the Global TV Demand Awards Virtual Festival. My name is Rebecca Zabarski, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Parrot Analytics. I have the pleasure to be speaking with Mar, EVP of Content and Strategy at Ryff, which is a company focused on the future of brand integrations and advertising with their innovative digital product placement solution. Hi, Mar. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, in last year in September of 2021, I read that Fast Company reported product placement is a $23 billion business and growing. Global spending is expected to exceed 23 billion in 2021, so I'm sure it will go up in 2022. And at the same time, marketers plan on decreasing their spending in traditional formats of advertising like TV and print ads. So it seems like a very ideal time to be talking about the future of advertising and get a better understanding of what companies like Ryff is doing. So tell us about Ryff and how it's capitalizing on this product placement market and kind of more about how you're going about doing that.
Yeah, no, I think you can see Ryff as a new innovative way for building a bridge between content and brands. The industry is changing, and I think we're just supplying a new sort of advertising technology, and what we're doing is you already mentioned it, we're focusing on virtual product placement. It's interesting to say, how do we do it? Because we work with every piece of content, and so we ingest the visual media. If it's a 2-minute clip, is 90, anything we can do at scale, and then our AI technology scans the content and determines thousands and thousands of data points, and they do it very accurately and per frame. Once we've determined exactly what the piece of content is about, what is in a piece of content, then we can give assignments. We can search for empty places, we can search for billboards, we can search for anything in there. And that's how we decide, or how we determine, what the value of a TV program is. And once we've determined the value of the TV program, you can, as a network or content owner, or even as an agency or a sales department, you can go out and sell that actively to the market. And I do have to say that not always is it about selling, it's about the creativity, what people want to do with it. We also get offerings about replacement or just a creative insertion. And I think you can ultimately say it's like it's one system, but it's the first part is determining what's in the content, and the second part is how could you monetize on that one.
And that is all powered by AI. I mean, determining what is in the content and all those spaces and opportunities.
Yes, so the first part is completely determined by AI. And then the background of our company, we've got our CEOs coming from NVIDIA. We've got people from the gaming and industry. My own background is content, and we've merged those expertise. And then we've decided that we figured out that use game engine to do this as a new approach to the market. So that creates a flexibility, and it creates a speed, which serves the industry very well at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of content right now, and there's a need for that flexibility. And I saw, just in terms of the technology, I think that's really fascinating to be able to seamlessly insert a brand or a product, let's say, into a scene. So I think people have this idea of product placement maybe from back in the 90s, like it's been around, right? But we're talking like so seamless that you would not even realize that this has been digitally inserted, right?
Exactly. You wouldn't see the difference. And I think we work with every piece of content. So we can do films, I already mentioned, we can do TV series, but we also work with influencer material. We work with social media. We work with sports, anything, any piece of content we can process, and we can find the right positions within that piece content. So as I already mentioned, we work with networks, we work with producers, we work with distributors, but we also work with agencies and brands directly. And that's where we come back to just building the brands, the bridge between the people that are supplying the content and the people that are wanting the content for monetization and for exposure as well. And I think, you know, having said that the biggest difference that Ryff makes in the market, and I already mentioned it, it's flexibility. And that flexibility goes into the new development in the market. So on the one hand, you've got globalization of content. Much more content is traveling. It's traveling faster, where in the past you would have contracts for 7 years or 10 years. Sometimes it's now 1 year or 2 years, and you will serve more countries. And if you look at those more countries, some of the countries are not familiar with the brands, with the local sponsorship. So there it creates that extra in the marketplace where you would say, we do it with brand A in New Zealand, we do it with brand B in London, and or in the UK, we do it with brand C in Brazil, for instance. So instead of looking at it at a one-time go, you can look at it as a multiple opportunity. You could monetize again and again and again. And it creates so much flexibility that not only do we do placements, but we do replacements as well. So if you say we made a deal with a certain brand, we can search for that brand in the content, we can replace it with another brand as well. Okay. So it's placement and replacement.
It's really fascinating what you say about the travelability, right? The globalization of content right now, and also the very different audience preferences that exist in different markets. So I can see that as, you know, a major strength to be able to go in and understand, okay, what is the audience in this market engaging with? What is the audience in this market engaging with? And being able to swap and personalize that content. I know we do work with you, you know, to do that, to find those type of different audience preferences really throughout the world. And it also brings me to my next question, which is more about that matching between the brand and the content, or whatever it is that you guys are helping facilitate. You know, I have to bring up the product placement. I don't think it was official, that just made headlines, which is the Peloton scene in the Sex and the City reboot, and Just Like That. And that was kind of like a big snafu. I mean, there's a lot of think pieces about that. We have this brand that's been placed in a scene, and it was not great for their brand, what actually happened within the show. So it was kind of a funny moment, I would say. I think a lot of advertisers were probably like, oh my gosh, what if that happens to us? So my question for you is, when you think from the advertiser perspective, how would you suggest they strike the right balance between advertising their product and aligning with the story, or the viewers, the audience who's engaging with whatever is on screen? You know, what are those like do's and don'ts of product placement for the advertisers?
Yeah, I think it's not an easy question. I'll try to answer as good as I can, but I think at the end of the day, what you already mentioned, all the brands will try to reach the highest efficacy possible. So I'm a big fan personally of using data to look at the perfect audience for your brands. And what we see in the market, much more what we see in the brand briefs that we receive as well, is that people are moving from sort of generic demographics to more smart audiences. And understanding the needs of your audience and fit to local regulations is highly important. We already mentioned that before, do's and don'ts. You will not place, for instance, a bottle of alcohol near a minor or near a car or anything. So what we have built into the platform is a security to do that. So you could set parameters. You could say, this is the brand brief, and you click the boxes on the compliance, anything you want, no violence, no minors, no nothing, and it will target exactly what you need. Having said that, that's just purely, that will not determine efficacy. That will only determine if you regulate to a sort of brand safety. If you don't do anything which you're not allowed to do as a brand or as a network or as a content owner. And it will make it very targeted to your brand. But understanding the consumer and your audience is just key. And I think this is actually, as Ryff, we've looked at what data could we offer to the client, because we're not going in and say, oh, we have this position. And the question you would get is, why do you have that placement? Why would we place our product there? And we try to answer that question for the audience so that you get a cultural and contextual right piece of content for them. And that's why we've been searching the market for the right piece of data. And that's also why we know each other, Rebecca, because we ended up with Parrot, of course. Mm-hmm. And from a content perspective, you know, my background is content. Mm-hmm. And so I knew Parrot from all the content analysis they made, and they approached it in a different way. And we wanted that different way as well. But when we started talking, we didn't find the perfect fit. And then we had a challenge from one of our networks, one of the key networks in the UK. And that key network actually asked us, we've got our top rated show on our VOD platform or on our OTT platform, and we would like to see if we could monetize it. It was a very old show, archive show. And when you start looking at it, you start as a creative brainstorm, look at, so what brand would fit in here? And they did it as well. And they gave us all the challenges. They said, we looked at everything, no brands want to go in. So we had long discussions with your team as well, and ended up in looking at the possibility of, instead creating a content affinity that you really already did, see if we could create a brand affinity as well. So we used the data, but sort of reversed engineered the data in looking at, so if you have a piece of content, the people that are watching that piece of content, what else are they watching? What else are they buying? What else are they doing? And so when we looked at that, we found out that the brand, there were two brands standing out, and both of the brands we would have never, ever thought of. No. And it was the perfect brand offering. And the reason why, so when we went back to the network and we said, this is the brand offering, it was a show about youngsters. It was with a lot of rough language, etc. And the brand that came out was a aftershave, something to groom yourself. And the audience was young people. And it just fitted perfectly. And that's when we decided to work much more with data like that we could find via the back door, sort of, the brand affinity for the content that we are offering.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you talk about that brand affinity. It's true. We've been able to use our audience demand data that we generate on the Parrot analytics side and kind of offer up the idea of who is engaging with the brands, right? Not just the followers of one brand, but then we actually look into their whole extended network. And we have this massive, massive data set that actually gets you access and information to things that you were saying before, understanding the audience preferences, understanding the match between the advertiser and the content. I love that example because it's funny when you say that, you know, I just imagine the client being surprised at the output, the result, because I think we all have a lot of our own ideas about what kind of brand might resonate within a show, right? Especially for some kind of product placement. Like, we see the content, we have an idea, like what would be really smart right here, but the data really does show some interesting things. So it must have been an interesting conversation when you suggested, you know what, this is what the data shows. And I'm actually curious, how was the reception? You know, you're using this new technology And I am curious, we're kind of in a similar business, right? Using very new technology in
Yeah,
industries that have existed for a long time. What's the general
yeah,
consensus?
yeah. No, it was, and it actually becomes, from the subjective opinion, becomes more an objective target.
Mhm.
You can objectively go in. You can also convince the brand more because you've got data to support it, and that was great. Actually, this company said this is brilliant because now we can run campaigns. So talking back to the flexibility and the use of data, it brought them a set of brands where they said, what if we run a campaign across the series? We offer it for 3 months, we take it away. We offer it for 3 months with another brand, we take it away. And they wanted to experiment much more with that. And therefore, they would also be able to measure for the brands the efficacy much better. And then once you train the systems again with what the output is, if it is a proven one, you'll train and you'll train and you'll train, and you get to better and better and better results. So they were very much open and actually very happy to work with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming a very smart advertising feedback loop, essentially.
Yeah, and I think also it allows for localization, because if you look, going back to the smart audience, the audience for maybe exactly the same show in the US or exactly the same show in the UK has got a different audience. If you would get stuck in the beginning because with one brand in the show and that would travel globally, but the audience in country A is a complete different audience than in country B, then you're missing out. And so what you can do for combining that data with our technology is that you would say in country A, you offer it with a local brand for that smart audience. And in country B, you offer it with a different brand that fits that audience better. And so these are the things that we've been investigating as well. We took just some shows that we weren't working on. We took shows that we were working on just to get a sense of how does it work. But, being able to target the right audience in the in the specific countries on the right time and the right place in the right piece of content is of course very important. I think it's something that will develop more and more and that we will use more and more moving forward.
I think so too. And, we're kind of seems like from this conversation, we're already living in the future. Um, but I have to ask you, as just to wrap up our conversation, looking ahead 10 years, you are at the forefront of advertising with this digital product placement and this smart audience concept. But when you think about what's going on in terms of, new technologies, maybe metaverse conversations happening right now, of course, what do you foresee happening within the next 10 years or so? What do you think is the future of advertising?
Yes, it's a little bit who's going to marry my daughter, isn't it? No, but
A little bit.
but
You have
yeah.
a crystal ball.
But I'm not an advertising expert. I'm going to be honest. I'm not. But what we clearly see is that advertising becomes more and more automated and data driven. Also, what we see is that the industry, the amount of positive and enthusiastic reactions we get on the offering we have, on the flexibility that we create, we just see that the industry is so hungry for these new innovations and new ways of integrating advertising into storytelling. And it's not so much, I think, about what the product is anymore. It's about the emotion the product creates. People want to be closer to the product, or the advertisers want to get the audience to care about the product more than saying, oh, it's 2 kilos, it's 20 centimeters, and it does this for you. It's more an emotion. You could see it happen with brands like Nike, for instance, or anyone else. And what we see also from a content perspective is that actually consumers become much more prosumers. They choose what they want, how they want it, where they want it, and when they want it. And I think that is something you see in so many places of not only the advertising, but also the content industry. Our children choose completely different things than we did in the past. And of course, the consumers, they just become much more interactive. It's about personalization, maybe even, you know, how can this work for us? It's a question we get a lot. Can you offer me a Coke and them an apple juice? Could you offer this? That's a lot where people are looking at. And when you talk about the metaverse, it's at the moment, it's such a hot topic, and especially because it creates that interactivity, it creates that personalization. I think it's a next level opportunity for advertisers, for content creators, for consumers. I'm going to be really honest, with a business hat on, for us, the metaverse is of course perfect, because it's all about virtual worlds. It's about virtual integration. It's about experiencing, and we fit perfectly in there. With the hat on as a mother or as a, you know, as a psychologist, I'm just sometimes skeptical if we're not creating an over virtual world, losing pieces of reality. So, you know, a little bit both ways.
Sure.
But I think it's an amazing opportunity.
It seems that way. I think there's going to be, as we expand more into those type of new technologies, and it creates more opportunities for companies like yours, of course, there's going to be another push for real life experiences as well. And, you know, I was speaking to a creator of a children's show for the same festival, and they are also looking into creating a metaverse content, or creating a metaverse really centered around their content. And this creator said, you know, I have children, and we're going to build this thing that will engage with them, and then I want them to set it down and go play outside.
Yes.
Right. So it's going to be
balance. At the end of
balance.
It's about balance and creating a blend instead of moving from one to the other world. But again, I think looking at what the possibilities are, if you look at where you were with, you know, the first internet versus where we are now, if you look at where are you going, it will become more and more interactive, and people will choose. They want to choose where they're going. And I think that's also where you create that flexibility for the brands and the advertisers to be part of that virtual world as well. But yeah, let's see.
I will tell.
I will tell, definitely.
Mar, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing more about the technology behind Ryff. It's a thrilling, exciting, crazy time to be a content creator and advertiser right now.
Yes, and being in this technology as well, I have to say. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.